exploring on the floor. So sitting at the head of your partner, just notice something about your own sitting first. Are you comfortable? How do you know if you're comfortable? And can you sit in a way where you can sit at their head and look at them down their length in the direction of their feet? So people on the floor, you're going to sense yourself. In all of this process, your active part is going to be sensing yourself, sensing the differences that you feel when different variations or different ways of doing things are tried. But right now, sense the person lying, sense the way your shoulders are lying and making contact, and the person who's looking. Could you look at their head in relationship to their shoulders, how the angle between the side of their head and their shoulder, whether their nose is oriented towards the ceiling or a little turned to one side. Maybe you can notice something about the plane of their face as they're lying. And if you look at them, as you're looking at them, how their arms are lying, their right arm and their left arm, how their hands are making contact with the floor. And if you could have X-ray vision, how much of their shoulder girdle, upper ribs, shoulder blade in particular, is in contact with the floor? You have any sense by looking where their weight might be heaviest, where the pressure between their upper back and the floor might be greater? So now the person who's lying, or actually one more question. If you had to make a guess, which of their arms might it be easier for them to move? It's one way of framing their question. Or which one of their arms might be clearer in their self-image? Which one? So no words. And now, person on the floor, could you roll and lie on one of your sides? So we will want to make you a little bit comfortable. So your knees and hips will be bent up. If you need pads under your head, you could ask your partner, tell them how many you think you need, or get a towel. Organize the position of their head relative to their body so that the line of their spine is as continuous as possible. But now you could sit at their head again and observe them. So if her head is on something that's small and rolled, it's more unstable. So, okay, you can use that, but that's better. Yeah. Look at the line of their spine, the configuration that they're in. Are they on their side, a little more forwards, rolled a little more forwards or a little bit backwards? How have they chosen where have they chosen to put their arm? I don't know, but just lift your head, Kevin, for me. I just want to. Folded blankets. We can be Princess and the Pea. Yep, go down and lift your head again. Folded blankets are unstable and usually feel uncomfortable. I mean, scrunched. How's that, Kevin? Better? Okay. Can you see them breathing? Can you see any movement of their breathing? from where you're sitting? Okay. Now, could you sit in relationship to your partner where you could, but don't do it yet, where you could bring one hand or both of your hands to touch and explore their shoulder? Where would you sit? So most people are likely to sit behind. On the table, it can be sitting at their head, but right. So last week, with the help of the boys, we looked at some of the functional anatomy, and we felt landmarks of the shoulder girdle on ourselves. So now you're going to explore that with your partner. So first of all, find a way of sitting where you feel like you could move your pelvis a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit forwards, a little bit back. And sense your own breathing. And then you're going to imagine that you don't know what a shoulder is like, what a shoulder does. And you're going to use yourself in a way that you can find out about this person's shoulder region. So where would you choose to bring your hands to make a connection with them? Do you use one hand? Do you use two hands? So just like the process that you're exploring, we ask questions when we're giving someone a lesson. When you were forming a system with your partner, you paused for a moment before you did anything to get a sense of the connection, to get a sense of yourself, to get a sense of the other. So can you be aware of yourself while you're using yourself to sense them? And how are you using your hands? Using your fingers, the palm of your hand? So often we trace out landmarks, bony landmarks, to clarify for someone a little bit how their skeleton is formed and what connects to what. And what do you do when you can't find something, or do you think it's something about yourself? Do you change the way you're using your fingers or your hands? Does your breathing change? Have you found some landmarks, some of the bony landmarks that the boys were showing us on your partner? And how would it now be to find a way to make a connection through those handles and begin to explore how this person moves. So we looked at some of the basic directions, but the shoulder, it may be that there are some directions that are a little easier than others. Can you go slow enough so that you might discover that? And what are you using of yourself to create this movement in another? Is the movement coming from the power of your hands, from your shoulders, or from your pelvis? Okay. Please gradually bring your hands away. Bring your hands away from your partner. Notice how you feel about leaving them. Move away from your partner. It's not that we want to jump away or suddenly abandon them, but, you know, being able to change the degree of connection. Now, the person lying, you're going to lie on your back, roll onto your back, and notice if you feel a difference. Compared, and person who was moving, sit at their head. And notice what you observe. So people on the floor, notice if you feel any change in the way one of your shoulders is lying on the floor compared to the other, and whether that change, subtle or otherwise, has influenced more of you than your shoulder region that was explored. Now, could you roll over and lie on the other side? Organize yourself to be comfortable. People who are sitting, you are going to, first of all, organize your sitting in relationship to them, where you can do a similar exploration with their shoulder, but this time you're going to put the blindfold on. Or the eye mask. So don't touch your partner yet. So some blindfolds take more time to put on than others. So people on the floor, you can be sensing yourself. How you experience yourself. Now, people who are sitting, take a moment to sense yourself now, your breathing, your sense of yourself. How do you sense the distance you are from your partner now? Then you're going to bring your hands to make contact with them. And notice how you make the connection with them now that you've quietened your visual sense. How are your hands active already? Or are they listening? Could you pause a moment? So without moving your hands, Just listen. Feel. Can you sense their breathing? Can you sense your own breathing? Are you, while you're touching, are you making this first way of listening? Are you sensing their skin? More of the tissues underneath? Or their skeleton? So you don't need to change your hands, just notice how it is. How can you keep your own spine long so that your weight is over your pelvis? How much of them can you sense without moving through your hands? Then begin with the intention not of exploring how they move yet, but of exploring them, their shoulder region. How do you do it now? Is it different? Is it the same? While you're, so when we work with someone, we're usually thinking of ways of using our hands that helps them experience themselves. So it is about what we can find out about them, but the way we ask those questions comes from a place of, did you know this about yourself? Oh, did you know this part of you felt like this? Goes in this direction? Is shaped like that? Or makes this angle? All the things that you were observing last week. Can you map out their clavicle? Where that meets the part of the shoulder blade on the top above their shoulder joint. And can you trace out the shape of their scapula? What distance it is from their spine? Do you notice things about the texture of the tissues, the qualities of the tissues that you're exploring? And where do you think might be a good handle if you wanted to begin to find out how their shoulder moved, how they might move from their shoulder? When you think about starting to explore movement, what part of yourself are you using? Where is the movement coming from? And can you sense in any direction when the quality of the movement changes? How would you know that? We don't have receptors in the other person, but we can sense any change in effort that we're using if we're not working too hard to begin with. The less work we're doing, the quicker we will perceive that. Do you have any way of knowing whether what you're doing is your partner is enjoying it? So not oscillating, not oscillating. Whether it feels comfortable to them. Okay, please bring whatever you're doing to stillness, and then disconnect yourself. Move away from your partner a little. Person on the floor, could you roll over and lie on your back without the head supports if you really don't need them? And notice what you experience now. Observe as you can sense yourself, then slowly remove your blindfold, sit at the head, sit at your partner's head, and just observe them for a moment. Maybe you'll be able to notice something. Maybe you won't. Maybe there isn't something to see. But people on the floor notice what you sense. And then without talking, could you change places? So first of all, you lie on your back. Sit at their head and just observe their way of lying, in particular their arms, their head, the relationship of their head to their torso and the line of their spine. Think about do you have any sense with X-ray vision or not of where their back might be pressing more firmly into the ground? And which of their arms do you think, would you guess, is more ready to move? People lying, could you roll to one side? Set yourself up so that you're comfortable to lie on your side, on this side for 5 or 10 minutes. People who are sitting, stay at their head for a moment. Notice their way of lying on their side. And then organize yourself to sit somewhere where you can bring both hands to your partner's shoulders. But before you do, check your own degree of comfort in sitting. Now, you've seen the skeleton. You've been creating images of what our skeleton, how we can use our arms. But to begin with, are you uncomfortable? It's not stable. But you're going to bring your hands to them in a way that you think you know almost nothing about this person, this shoulder, and find out what you can. Just mapping out to begin with. So you're listening, feeling them. So just see. Feel them breathing, the movement of their breath in their shoulder. Can you sense the movement of your own breathing? Oh, Jenny's got it. It's all right. Thank you, Jenny. So we're not moving yet. We're just sensing mapping out, finding the edges, tracing the bony landmarks that we can feel. And I would like you to all stop exactly how you are and see if you can sense your breathing. And then maybe you want to consider changing how you're sitting to see if you can find a position where you can sense yourself better. After you've traced out those landmarks and relationships and felt the texture of your partner, Can you begin to explore how they move from here? So where are you creating this movement from? So I can see some people are using their elbows, some people are using their wrists. Can you organize yourself so it comes from your pelvis? And how much do you need to move them to know that they're moving? How much of them do you feel involved or participates? Maybe you remember from that experience that some people tend to anticipate. And that can be about a few things, but is there a speed you could go at where you felt you were moving as one system? Kevin? Find a way to disconnect from your partner, move away from your partner, and let them roll onto their back. Sit again at their head end. Notice if you observe any changes in the way they're lying. Maybe it could be in their breathing. And sometimes it can be in the way their shoulder lies, their arm lies. And of course, people on the floor, you're active in sensing yourself and any differences that you hear, the directions, any differences that your partner makes from those instructions. And please roll over onto your other side. And first of all, just take a moment to observe them, then find a comfortable way to sit where you can reach them, reach their shoulder. You know what you're going to be doing, but you're going to put your blindfold on and do this one blind. So first of all, take a moment to notice how the impact, the impression on you of having the visual stimulus quietened a little. You feel more comfortable, less comfortable? How do you sense your own breathing? Yourself, your contact with the ground, how you're sitting. Then when you have formed your sense of self, can you bring your hands to contact your partner? Now, even structurally, our shoulders there are differences, but certainly in the form, the shapes, the contours, the textures, because most people are dominant handed. There's a difference in the tissues and how the relationships. So take your time to sense here and notice without the visual input, what's different? How do you listen to them differently? Do you listen to yourself any differently? So you're not trying to move them. You're only exploring their shoulder, okay? And just see, can you be more on your pelvis? So you could go a little closer. Yeah, a bit little more. Do you need a roller to sit on? Yeah. Okay. So right now you're still mapping out their shoulder region, their shoulder girdle, their shoulder blade, where their arm meets the shoulder girdle, their clavicle. And just notice there are places where it's clearer, places where it's less clear. And what's the speed you're choosing to go at? Slower or faster than the other side? And what about what you're using to sense with? You're using your fingertips, the pads of your fingers, the palms of your hands. Your pelvis. Do you try sensing with different parts of your hand? Maybe you remember the exploration you did last segment with Zoran about qualities of touch and what characteristics you could sense using yourself in different ways. Those of the people on the floor, notice as anything different in the way your partner's touching you. So you could begin to explore, when you've mapped out this region, what's shoulder girdle, what's not shoulder girdle. You could begin to move them a little bit, explore moving them from some of the handles that you found. And when you think about moving them, what are you using in yourself? How are you organizing yourself to move them? How much do you need to move them to know they're moving? And how much of them do you feel you have in your hands? What directions do you choose to explore? How many times do you move them in the same direction, or do you vary the trajectory a little bit, the direction? Okay, please bring your exploration to a close. Gradually bring your hands away from your partner. Move away from your partner just so that they could roll onto their back without you interfering. Keep your blindfold on just for a minute more, because that means you'd have to find your way around them to free them to lie on their back without using your visual system. First on the floor, roll onto your back. Then notice how you sense yourself now. People who have the blindfolds on, you can remove them slowly, sit at their head, your partner's head, and take a moment to notice what you notice. Look at their breathing, the way their arms are lying, that sense of where they contact the ground, or if there's a place where they lean a little more heavily. And then people on the floor, you can roll yourself up to sitting. Maybe take a moment to walk around and then come back to your partner and discuss how that experience was for you.